my two friends, colleagues, they have a lot of differences, but also a lot of similarities. So Seema has been with her company a little over 2 years. Greg's been with Hoffman for 22 years. Hoffman's been on Darwin for several years, and Seema's been on Darwin for several months, a very recent one. Seema's from the UK. Greg is from Birmingham, Alabama, not Birmingham, England. And Chelsea is owned by The Telegraph, which is a large corporate media company, and Hoffman Media is a multi-generational family-owned company. So there are a lot of differences. Oh, and as we go through this, you'll notice they both have accents, and they may not be the same accent, so I'll leave it at that. However, going back to what General Fraser said, right, when he was sitting right here talking with Tom, these guys are on the front lines of audience development and the front lines of consumer marketing, living and breathing it on a day-to-day basis. So that is one of the things they have very in common. They both have pretty fancy new offices. They're very different, but I've been to both of them, and they're very great. And I think they reflect the personality of the organization. And they both have a regional perspective from their publishing, from what they publish. Seema's company publishes English Home, and Greg's company, Hoffman, publishes Southern Home. So there are a lot of similarities, as well as some of the other things that you saw up there on the screen. So, okay, quickly, I just want to set the table. I'll ask both you guys just a quick snapshot of what is the main, and I know the portfolio differs, but what is kind of the main focus of the magazine, of the media publishing arm? I'll go to Greg first.
The main focus of the magazine publishing arm is to expand and grow our brands to the nth degree. To not only grow the print subscriptions, but the brand as a whole, the digital experience, the event experience, the product experience, etc.
Yeah, really echoing what Greg said. I think it is, we want to be able to deliver, curated, tangible content that our readers, that they want to read, that they want to subscribe to. And it doesn't matter what format that they want them in. We are, we're still, heavily print, and we're still at the start of our digital journey. But, what we find is, in the UK and the US, it's not really only just the content, but they've built real relationships, with our brands. And I think, we just want to be able to, expand on that and just be able to deliver more of that. And in doing so, give them a really positive customer experience and, new products that they will want to purchase.
So, not on the cards, but so no, I want to go further into that. So how do you determine what people want to consume?
I think a lot of it is, customer feedback. We have a stand at the Chelsea Flower Show, and we have a lot of our subscribers from the US. They just come up to our stand to tell us, that they love the magazines. They've been subscribing for years, and what they really enjoy. They write, they write to the editors to tell them, what they like, what they dislike, and what really they want to see more of. And I think, effectively that is the audience that you are marketing to. And if you listen to what they want and you publish the content that they want, I think they will just continue to build those relationships. Great.
So we're going to talk about modernization and moving forward, but I want to move backwards a little bit. That in the recent past of COVID, I think affected, I know, Hoffman a lot. Absolutely. So COVID happens. I know most of the media companies, especially companies in the nesting space of cooking and decorating, people were home 100% of the time and cooking 100% of the time. So I know there was a big boost then. But besides just, okay, responses were up and retention was higher, how else did that transform your business?
It transformed it in a big way, especially for one of our brands called Bake from Scratch. That was one of the hobbies that people went back to that maybe they had abandoned because of their busy work lives. It was also a hobby that people really dove into. Maybe they weren't bakers before the pandemic, but the grocery stores, they could still get supplies to bake, and they taught themselves how to bake, and we helped them do that. We were able to partner with Williams-Sonoma and launch a Zoom class on Monday nights. It still exists today, where you could buy a ticket and log into the Zoom class, and Brian Hart Hoffman, who is the author and founder of Bake from Scratch, one of our owners, hosted this Zoom class. He kind of broke the rules a little bit, I guess, although we were critical business to be open.
There were no rules.
Right, there were no rules. So he had videographers, a sound guy, and his right-hand person, our chief content officer, come into his condo in downtown Birmingham to film this class. So that and we did some other things like produced puzzles, for examples. We're known for some of our beautiful photography that we publish in our magazines. We have in-staff photographers, and we selected some of the most beautiful images that we could find, and we sent them to our partners in our Donnelly Asia and produced jigsaw puzzles, because that was a fad for that people were doing at home as well, and we marketed those direct to consumer and shipped them to their homes.
You guys are still doing the paid online classes.
Absolutely. In fact, we after the pandemic was over, our lease was up on our building that we were residing in, and like everyone, we realized maybe we didn't need 100 seats anymore, because everyone loved the work from home environment. So we bought, or the Hoffman family bought with a separate company, a building, and we gutted it to the studs. And we redid this building, and I often joke, but it's not really a joke, it's reality. Brian Hart Hoffman designed this entire building. It was an old law office around his television studio that we filmed the Williams-Sonoma class from today. And that has opened up opportunities for us to also, obviously, to do YouTube videos and whatnot, but also we package videos for our advertisers and whatnot in that studio. We have videographers and photographers on staff, and we're able to really offer a lot of services to folks with this space.
So it sounds like a silver lining. So Seema, some of your titles are travel related, or at least aspirational travel related. So that wasn't obviously a very good industry for COVID, but how did you guys get through that time?
I think actually, to be fair, we didn't, our titles such as, English Home and English Garden, we saw a massive boost because of COVID for those titles in the UK and the US. But yeah, for titles like Scotland and Britain, which a lot of subscribers and readers see as almost curated travel guides, we saw, we actually didn't see a decline. We saw, minimal growth. But actually, I think it was just continuing to, market to them. And I think a lot of it was because it's so aspirational. And, I think some of those titles is, that is the experience that they want when they come over to the UK. I think, they continue to subscribe. We didn't really see a drop off. And then actually for those particular titles, after, COVID ended, we continue to see growth within that space. Whereas I think for other titles like, English Home, English Garden, some of our UK-based titles, I think, you hear this a lot, but you'll never reach that, that COVID growth. And whilst COVID, we don't ever want to be back there again, but I think for a lot of, magazine publishers, they did really, really well out of it. But trying to replicate that, or even to try and stand still nowadays, you have to work 10 times harder. We've completely changed our marketing strategy, how we communicate to them, the channels that we market with, and then also, the approach that we take, because what worked then doesn't work now. And I think, things change so quickly that actually something that might have worked yesterday might not work tomorrow, and we have to be really agile in our approach.
Perfect segue. So, Seema, you, like I said earlier, you recently brought the U.S. titles onto the Darwin platform, and don't know what the schedule is, but at some point the UK ones will come over as well. So, as you were looking at where you will be tomorrow on the marketing side, what specifically attracted you to Darwin as opposed to where you guys were before?
I think honestly, it's the visibility that the reporting gave, you know, the data, the accessibility to data, and how easy it all was. I remember seeing a Darwin demo about 18 months ago, and I think I said to Danny, you know, I want that. Because it's so impressive. Like it's like nothing that you've seen before. And marketeers, really, what we want is to be able to make data-driven decisions. But if you don't have access to your data, that becomes impossible. And I think, you could see straight away, not only could I see that, I'll be able to, make these data-driven decisions, but also I'll be able to, grow my subscriptions, I'll be able to scale, I'll be able to do a lot of things that weren't really possible before. And I think, I've said this before, I think, honestly, the best thing about Darwin is that, they're not digital first. But they're not only print either, and they, you can do both without compromising on either. And I think that's, you don't see that with, your traditional subscription bureaus or with, cloud-based digital-first platforms.
Right. Great. All right. So, Greg, some of your titles have a geography bent that they are built from the South. I forgot to say that, yes, that I was actually built in Toronto. I was born about 3/4 of a mile north of here. So this is my homecoming as well as Darwin's homecoming. So anyway, back to Hoffman. So, but how do you guys grow and market beyond just the Southern native audience?
Well, that's interesting, and we do get accused of that across all of our brands, but all of our brands aren't just skewed to the South. I mean, of course, several of them do have South in the title. We have the Southern Home brand, the Southern Lady brand, the Taste of the South brand.
Louisiana cooking.
Louisiana cooking out of Louisiana. So about half of our portfolio definitely skewed towards the South. But our Bake from Scratch, Victoria, a lot of you Canadians might have thought that that was a Canadian magazine. It is not. It is not about Victoria, Canada, but thankfully we have quite a number of subscribers that still think that it is. Victoria is a person, not a reason to us. So we own that for the titles that have South in their name. They are a national magazine. We have subscribers in every state of the United States, and they all have foreign and Canadian subscribers as well on a smaller scale. But what we really we try to represent through our content the hospitality and the warmth of the South. One of the things that Phyllis Hoffman DiPiano taught me, she was a great mentor in my life, was that when we produce magazine content, it's not about who our readers are, it's about who our readers want to be. It's not what they have, it's what they want to have. So there are tons of people outside of the southeastern United States who are interested in, I'm not saying you all want to be Southerners in the United States. That's not what I'm accusing anyone of. But some people do like to read about it. And we just try our best to represent the South and encourage people outside of the South to learn about our brands and our culture.
So, Seema, I want to ask you the same question because you have these, I don't know what to call them, Anglophile magazines or something about Scotland and about Britain, yet they have you guys have a larger subscription base in the U.S. I mean, it's obviously a bigger market than in the U.K. for some of those. So maybe it's that aspirational aspect. I mean, what do you guys find to be so attractive that the audience finds attractive in your publications?
I think that they are heritage brands, and I think what our readers find so attractive is they see it as like, almost like curated, like off the beaten track, off the beaten path, a view of the UK. It's like that romanticized image that they want to experience when they think about coming, going to visit Scotland or Britain, or and they honestly they see those magazines as like souvenirs, and we produce a lot of bookazines, things like, Royals at Home, Stately Homes, Myths and Legends, and they really, the way that they engage with that content, and it's full of stunning photography, but also, we've had subscribers write to us and say, oh, we'd love to stay in one of those castles when we come and visit, because that's what they want to experience. And I think, and that goes beyond just engaging with the content.
And what is the difference? I know the titles in the US are those heritage brands. In the UK, you have some things that at first blush don't look like they fit, like race car engineering. And so how do the titles that are UK exclusive, how do those fit in the portfolio?
I think they're all specialist brands, but very niche, but very, very loyal audiences. We've got Classic Boat, and I know there's a Classic Boat subscriber in this room today who absolutely loves the magazine. Absolutely loves it.
I always love it when you're like sitting on an airplane or something and you have like someone across the aisle from you reading one of your magazines or one of our clients' magazine. My wife would get really mad at me, but I want to like tap them on the shoulder and start talking to them. But
Yeah, but I think that's what it. I think that the editors and the teams that work on those brands, they are so passionate about those brands. And they live those brands, and so when they produce content, and I think this is true of all of those titles, it is. It's from the heart, and you can tell by like the effort that goes into it. But interestingly, so magazines like Race Car Engineering, Classic Boat, Sailing Today, a lot of those, I would say probably for a lot of those titles, about 50% of subscribers aren't actually UK based, and so it has a mass appeal in Europe and in the US.
great. And I think, a lot of the stuff that we talked about earlier about AI, I was at an AWS symposium in New York a while ago, and they talked about, everyone's referral traffic is down, but the ones that are affected the most, really exponentially, are the ones that are delivering general news that you can kind of commoditize anywhere else, but there's probably not a lot of places where you can read about some engine in the F1, the real details that you guys may have gotten a preview on or something. So it's about what we've talked about today, just the connecting with unique content. So Greg, I want to talk to you about, since we're talking about modernization and future-proofing the businesses, you guys grew from a legacy print publisher to diversify your business to events, to books. Talk about that transformation and what worked, maybe what didn't work, and how that is kind of contributing to the overall business now.
Well, actually, we didn't have a choice. I don't know that I would be sitting here representing Hoffman Media talking to you today if we did not diversify from our print subscription business, our newsstand business, and our advertising business. The first move we made, obviously all of you made as well, I'm sure, is to expand the inventory for our advertising department into digital platforms and such as that. That did work, but it didn't work in a big enough way to allow me to be sitting here today. So we took two smaller parts of our business. As Cary mentioned, the book business that we were doing 22 years ago when I started. Phyllis had produced numerous books, but when we really decided to dive into it, we were doing about 6 what we call house branded books per year. Those books we marketed direct to consumer, and we dabbled in the trade just a bit. They were marginally profitable and a very good piece of our business, but we saw an opportunity to really invest and go in head first. So we created a division with a leader. Today, this year so far, and I just got an email today where we're adding another one. We've sold another one, so officially we have 22 books on our schedule this year. We were able to take our existing staff. Like I said before, we have photographers, we have a test kitchen, We can develop recipes, we test recipes, we shoot recipes, we have prop stylists, we have food stylists. We had all these things in place already to support our magazine brands. So it was pretty seamless for us to transition into the book business and do more with less, like we all need to do to survive and grow the profitabilities of our companies. We have had to, or we have allowed ourselves to expand. We have hired some editorial people and a leader, like I mentioned, for the book division. But we still use those test kitchen people and the photographers. And quite frankly, we've shut down a few magazines, unfortunately, and it's allowed all of those people to keep their jobs because we've expanded the book business. We also expanded on our experiential event business. I think most of you, I heard a lot of talk today, chatter in the halls and during workshops and whatnot about a lot of us are in the event business, and some of you may be doing it on the same level that we are. But we are doing very intimate events that are abroad from the United States mainly. We have events in Japan, San Miguel, Mexico, the Danube River, Paris. They started with our Bake From Scratch brand. Brian Hoffman is the champion of these events. We do not work with an outside travel agency at all. We plan them ourselves. They come with a ticket price of about $14,000. And they have 20 or so people that go on each event. We have we have alumni. We have one alumni that goes to several events that spent about $150,000 with us last year, one person, going to events and buying products and subscriptions and et cetera. So our revenues from events and books alone are more than 50% of our total revenues today. This is growth we've seen in the last 2 to 3 years. And it's the majority of our profits, to be frank about it. But they do go along. We cannot do what we do with the books and what we do with the events without the brands. So it's not like we're abandoning the magazine business at all. We're just using that platform that we worked so hard for 30 years to build, to diversify and grow our business.
And I think that, well, first of all, the experiential stuff is AI proof. That can't bring a human being into the kitchen and knead the dough and things like that. So I think that's a great way to future-proof the business. And I think, like you said, it is piggybacking on the authoritative voice of the brands to build this other stuff, as opposed to someone else who's just entering the marketplace and doesn't have that authenticity. So Seema, what are your plans for diversification? And I don't know if you're able to leverage any of your corporate resources or anything, or if it's kind of separate. And then the second half of that would be preserving the legacy brand and the legacy business along with any new lines of business, any new channels.
So I think, obviously, whilst we're owned by the Telegraph Media Group, we are, Chelsea Magazines, it does operate as its own business with its own P&L, but, we do a lot of cross-selling to, Telegraph subscribers and vice versa. They have a lot of shared interests, and I think, the audience demographic, the reader demographic is very similar. They're older, affluent audiences. In terms of they're interested in, gardening or art, travel, and the Telegraph have a lot of those verticals, and we have a lot of brands that feed into the same thing. And I think our shared goal is that we want to grow subscriptions in the UK and the US. Now, from our point of view, the way in which we go about doing that, and to ensure that what we have is a sustainable business, because print revenues still make up quite a large part of our our overall revenues. We've had to really change the way in which we market. I think before, when I joined Chelsea, they were really focused on just looking at ROAS as a metric, and we've completely changed that, and we look at lifetime value, attribution, because you have to evolve, and we've moved to an always on approach. We have onboarding journeys for our subscribers, and we have regular win back campaigns in place. I think and that's ideally what we have in the UK. We have 90% of our subscribers are on recurring payment methods, and that's what you want to see, because that is I'd like to say, if you've got a loyal subscriber base, fairly regular income that will come in every month. And that's where we want to get to in the US as well, where it was it's more legacy channels like direct mail, agents, and it's like really moving away from that, and thinking about the approach that we take in the UK. There's no reason why we can't have the same in the US. It's just
Except for we don't do direct debit here, or
you don't
North
do
America, right?
you don't do direct debit, and the amount of check payments is unbelievable.
Yes, I agree with you. I don't know what to say about that, but yeah, that is correct. Every publisher is trying to get out of it. We set up infrastructure to process paper checks electronically, but we want to get out of it too. So we just have to get the consumers to get out of it. And I don't know, it's a weird thing in that it seems like this industry is the last industry that people write checks for. It's an odd little thing. Anyway, so I got an email, or my team got an email from Greg last week or something, talking about two of the brands that you're basically going from approximately a $20 subscription price to, let me look here, $60 on one of them, Tea Time, and $80 on Southern Lady. That's a big delta. So, all right, since we're talking about Tea Time, spill the tea.
Okay.
On the
So
strategy behind that.
First of all, tea time is not about golf. It is about drinking tea.
Oh, yeah, TEA time.
TEA time. It's teapots and tea parties, and you guys know more about drinking tea than I do. I know how to print the magazine. I don't know a lot about the content. I rely on the editors to do that. But we are relaunching the brand. It's a very bold move. May, June will be our last traditional issue. Right now, it is 84 pages, I believe, and 7 7/8 by 10.5 short cutoff magazine. Sometimes I joke to call it a brochure. Or average order value is about $18. We are relaunching that brand. It's going to be 164 pages. It's going to be on 60-pound paper. We are investing in the content, investing in our staff to really enhance it. It is going to 3X. And $60. We're going to own that. We're going to market that to an affluential audience. Southern Lady's probably a better example of how that will come into play. There's, let's call them neighborhoods in every city, country clubs in every city, and there's a certain demographic of people that want to pay for quality. We're not going to discount these subscriptions either. Southern Lady is also about an 18 average order value, and it's going to a large format. It's going to be 10 inches wide, 164 pages as well, and we're going to highlight things. We plan to make sure that the kitchens that may be in the magazine have Wolf stoves and Sub-Zero refrigerators and things like that. I think of it's about quality product, quality content. Again, back to what people want to be, as opposed to who they are. And we're going to own it. It's just like, I told you earlier, I can't tell you much about drinking tea. I can go ask my editor, Lorna Reeves, and she can tell you all you want to know about drinking tea, but I can tell you about a Yeti cooler, and I can tell you about a Costa sunglass, because I once took the leap to spend the money and use those products that I've never turned back. I own 3 pair of Costas now and 3 Yeti coolers. And you know why? Because they're quality products, they stand behind them, and they have great customer service. And we plan to do all of those things. It's a very, very bold leap. Maybe next year I can tell you that we were super successful and we turned the business around, those 2 titles around. That's the goal.
All right, I want to leave a couple minutes for some questions. So I have one last question for you guys, for both of you. After this, you're going to go, let's say you're walking on the streets of Toronto, and out of the corner of your eye, you see a little shiny thing, and you pick it up, and it is a genie lamp. And you rub the lamp, and the genie comes out, and he says, I'm going to grant you 3 wishes, but one of the wishes has to be about work. What do you wish for?
Well, subscription growth and more revenue.
Okay.
I mean, keeping it really, really simple.
Okay. Greg, your genie?
It's pretty easy. $5 million of profit in 2 years.
All right. There you go. I have a couple other questions, but I do want to open it up for anyone in the room. If you have any questions for Seema or Greg, I think we have a microphone. I see 2 microphones. If anyone has a question, stump the panel now.
There are many opportunities in the magazine for reader interaction. In particular, what I'm very intimate with is there's an annual beauty parade of best-looking classic yachts, which I know you get a lot of response to. To what extent are you using that customer response in your decision making? Does it give you continued confidence because of the levels of interaction? We talk about interaction from a digital point of view, which is more of automated metrics, but it's harder for print. And to what value do you take from reader interaction? Thank you, sir.
I think that's a very good question, and I think the feedback is invaluable, and the editorial teams, they really take it on board, and they try and use it when they're thinking about the content to put in the next issue. I would say, from a marketing point of view, we probably don't do as much with it as we should, because unless nothing is stored in this in the same place, so actually we have no idea. Our data doesn't talk to each other, and I think when we can get to a place where everything's feeding into the same platform, and then you're using those insights to really think about, we can use this, and then we can highlight these things when we're next marketing to our subscribers, because this is effectively what they will look for when they want to purchase a magazine subscription. And it's a niche audience, but once you get those classic boat subscribers, they never leave. It has the best retention rates I've ever seen. So to your point, I think we should be doing a lot more with it, but I think we need to get it into a place where it goes alongside the data to really help us use it in the best way possible.
I think historically or traditionally, editorial and advertising and sales have been very siloed. But I think in the brave new world where, people aren't just buying a page in the magazine, they're buying sponsorship to events and takeovers on the website, that those lines are coming together, where even some of this anecdotal feedback on the editorial side can potentially influence the marketing side as well. Any other questions? All right, I have one. If there's not another one, then I'm going to go. So as you guys evolve and the businesses evolve, that you're not a print publisher anymore, because that's 50% of your business now. This is to both you guys. What skills do you look for when you're hiring or promoting or assigning stuff that might be different from the way you may have done this 5 or 10 years ago?
Well, it's pretty easy for us. We look for people who have an owner-like mentality most of all. We want every single person that works for Hoffman Media to make decisions as if they own the company. That's very important to us. We look for people that are kind and treat other employees well. We look for people that have integrity in everything, that work well with our vendors. And when you find people that have these type of characteristics, they're going to help you grow your business. That's just 3 of 5 or 6 things that we really strive to have.
Yeah, I think that was a great answer. No, I think it's having team players with can-do attitudes who are passionate about the content, but really from a marketing and subscriptions point of view, it's really finding people who understand recurring revenue and what it entails, and because I think it's so important. And I think there's a lot of people, like new people coming into the industry, and so it's being able to provide them with the skill sets that will help them really understand, because it's when people think about, marketing roles, it's not just all, creatives and copywriting, but it's really understanding, how you can use data to make informed decisions, to be agile, to be proactive, and I think if you find people who have those qualities and who aren't scared to try things, I think, and I agree, I think this has been said before, you know with the test and learn approach, it's like, fail fast, because I think, you have to try things.
Yeah, if you don't fail, you're not testing enough. So, yeah, and I think with the digital paradigm, there was the life cycle of subscriptions that someone had up earlier, that it used to be, oh, you sell a subscription and then you send people renewal notices via email and snail mail and everything else, and you try to get them to resubscribe. But on the digital side now, the retention strategy, I think, is the content strategy. Because if someone signs up but they don't sign in to get a recipe from Bake from Scratch, or they don't sign in to see the latest photo spread of the great castle or whatever's going there, when they get that notification that their renewal is going to come up, they're going to say, oh, I haven't really used that much. When you send someone a magazine, it shows up in their home and it sits on their table and they probably read it. When they have to actively go in and log in, I think you need to constantly, whether it's via email and via social and everything else, give them notices that, hey, here's a story that we think is relevant specifically to you. So it's not like the editors are over here doing their thing and then the marketing people are over here. In the digital world, it's really one and the same. So I don't know if you've reorganized or partnered along with the editorial side to effectively, I know you're launching your paywall, so it's not quite up yet, but you still do have digital
Yes, I
magazines.
thought about that a lot today, especially in one of the workshops that I was in that Annie led. I feel like everything needs to be behind a paywall. Well, not everything, but every brand, because we've been concentrating on the one, as you know, that you've been working with me on. But we need to really be having a discussion about not waiting on the rest of these brands to get behind the paywall, because it opens up so many doors to interact with our customers as they log in and whatnot.
Great. On what last call for questions? All right, Demir.
Not really a question, more of a public service announcement. If you do see shiny objects in the streets of Toronto, please do not pick them up. Thank you.
Hey, there might be a genie there. You just never know. You never know. All right, great. Well, I want to thank my panelists, Greg and Seema. I want to thank you guys, and enjoy I think we're in the final stretch, but enjoy the rest of the conference.